Hi, in this video, we'll consume a service from S/4HANA Cloud on SAP API Business Hub. We'll use, again, the purchase order approval service or purchase order display service from S/4HANA Cloud, and we'll consume it in SAP Appgyver. Now, if you don't have a trial account, I would recommend you to, register yourself and get a trial account so you can use this, API to, build your app on your own. Without the trial account, you will not get access to the API. And for this video, or for this demonstration, you don't really need any infrastructure on-prem. This is totally on cloud. So SAP Appgyver is on cloud. S/4HANA Cloud is accessible on SAP API Business Hub. So you don't have any dependencies. You can just directly start your SAP Appgyver and you can consume a service from here. So once you launch your SAP API Business Hub, you can find the purchase order process service there. And once you launch that, you will be brought in on this page. So let me switch to my larger screen. So here you can see on a left hand side, we have multiple options. You can have a purchase order collection of services. You can have a purchase order item collection of services. You can have header notes and so on. For this demonstration, we are just going to concentrate on purchase order list and items which belongs to that purchase order. So we'll show the purchase order list on a first page. From there, we can navigate to the second page, which will be the purchase order details. And on the detail, we can show the item list. So a basic app. So for that, we'll go to purchase order. On a purchase order, you can see the get service. So select that service. And if you already logged in into your account, trial account, you will be able to execute this service. So click on get and run. So this will produce an output where you can see the response down here, and you will also see the request URL. Now we are going to use this URL to build our SAP Appgyver app. So now I'll switch back to Appgyver. I have already logged in Appgyver. I will create a new project. Let's call this S4 Cloud PO, create. Now, as usual, the first step is to, configure the data source for the app. Now we'll go to data source and then we'll create a data source using REST API direct integration. And I'm using a REST API integration and not the OData integration is because as of now, I do not have any option in OData integration to pass an API key. The authentication for this API is by API key on a header parameter, like basic authentication. You send authentication with basic and a base64 encoded user and a password. So similarly, you can have an API key and you can pass that as an API key and a key as a value, and the service will authenticate you based on that key. That option is not available in OData integration, and you don't even have an option to customize that. So that is why we have to rely on a REST API instead using just native OData integration. And if you want to see, I can show you where it is. So if I come on this page, you see here I have only two options. I can use the bearer token or I can use the basic authentication. Now if I use the bearer token, it has a different header. So bearer token basically is sent as authorization as a header property with bearer and followed by a token, which we don't have. So we don't have. If we want to use API, these are not good options for us, and that is why we are not using OData native integration. So let's go back to the REST API direct integration. Now the first thing, we need a PO list. Our first page requires PO list. So like I said, we have this URL which gives us a PO list. So let's get this URL. Go here. Go here. Let me switch to my screen. Go here. And we'll say this is my PO collection. We'll call this as a collection. I'll put my resource URL here. And by the way, we have to change the URL. We cannot use it as is. So put that, and then we don't need this part. We can add that later in the collection, because this is the base of a service. We are not passing any entities yet. This is just the base, pure base. Save. Now you can pass the authentication header here. So I will add, and the key, you will find it in the trial run here. You can expand the request, go to your headers, and here you can copy the API key as a property. So we'll label key as a API key, and the value you can pick it up from here. This is the value. So I will be masking it. You can use your own value and then save. So now we see here we have an authentication key, and our service will be authenticated on the backend. Now, apart from the API key, if I run my service as is without any additional configuration, the response will be in XML, and that's the default format. So we have to change that format as well. And the simplest way we could do, we can pass the URL parameter though. A dollar format is equal to JSON, and then system will format into JSON, but you don't really need to do that. You can just add another header attribute as accept, and let's call accept, and the value should be application JSON. So when you set this, the service responds in a JSON format instead an XML format, and this is at the base, so that means you don't have to do anything for collections or single records. This will be passed on for each call. So everything is okay here. Now we'll move on to the collection. This is where we are going to call our entity to get all the POs. So I'll switch back here. I will go and pick my entity, and again I'm keeping the 50 top, so for a performance it's better. And then we'll add that entity here and save. Now, pretty much with this configuration, we should have access to our service. However, the output is not in the way we're expecting. So usually, if you look at the OData response, the response starts with a D as a first property of a JSON array, and then there's a results, and everything is under results. So if you look at the D, is just a single record. It does not have multiple rows, and it's not a collection. So to avoid that, you can set a key here, a path key, and that we can do it by doing d dot results. So we are just kind of giving a heads up, like, this is what I'm expecting. Just ignore first two parts, D and results, and just go directly to the next array. So that's all it means, and save. So now we can test. So we'll go back and run test. So perfect. We have expected results. There's no problem. And then we can set this as a schema from our test results and save. Now we did for collection, we could do it for a single PO. And for that, we'll go back to our API. I don't need a request here. I'll navigate down here, purchase order number. So this one gives us a single purchase order. And I will go back, pick a purchase order from here, and go back to purchase order entity, enter my purchase order, and then run. Now this should extract a single PO, and this is what we need on a detail. If you need it, you could just skip this step and directly call items entity. There's nothing stops you, but a few details on a PO, you will find it on a detail. So it's a good idea to implement. So in this case, the first part or a service part should be same. The only difference is we have a different, could be a different entity or a same entity with the key. So in this case, I think it's just the additional key, purchase order, and then we pass the key. So if I go back to our service, we had a purchase order, and then we are going to add a key. So we'll go back here, that ID will remain there. That, I'll take that, and that's our purchase order. Now this ID here is the it's a placeholder, URL placeholder. So we are passing a placeholder, and we'll pass a value to this placeholder, which will be replaced when we make an actual call, and that is this ID in parentheses. So since it is expecting in a single quotes, if you notice here we have %27, which means a single quote. We have to put single quotes around this parenthesis, so not inside, not right beside the ID, but outside the parenthesis, and that should give us access to our single a single purchase order detail. Now again, the response key in this case is also embedded in D and a results, but results is a single array, so you can skip that and you can just set D and you can try. I know that's why I'm doing it ahead of time, but if you don't set that and if you go test your service, you will see an error. So you go in, now we'll test this service. So since we set ID, or let's change this, instead ID we'll call it as a PO number. There. And since we call PO number, we have to change it here too. The placeholder name should be the same one what we have down here. So now we have a PO number and we can test this. Here it says PO number. We can pick the PO again from the test. So we have this 450001 PO. Copy that, go back. We enter the PO number and run a test. So perfect. We have response and we have a single record for a PO with PO details. And we can set this from a schema and save. So pretty much this service will give us access to a list of POs, and it will also give access to a single individual PO details. Now, moving from this, we also need item list because the aim is to show the PO details, then tap on a PO and then go to the detail, and on a detail page, show the PO details along with the PO items. So for PO items, we cannot use the same service, so we have to call another service. So let's add another resource, same REST API. We call this as PO items, and the resource URL will go back to our API or business hub, SAP API business hub, and in here you navigate down here under items and then select the get purchase orders, purchase order number to purchase order item. So the first line on the record, click there. Now this expects a purchase order, which we have already copied from the earlier test, and we run. Now this purchase order doesn't have any items. I think the order 11 has one item, contains one item. Okay, so 11 is the one which has an item. But this gives us the base URL. Again, the service URL is same. It's just a different entity. So we'll go back. Our service URL is the same URL. Again, we need to set the API key. For now, I'm just copying it from the API Business Hub. But you should be, creating parameters, store it somewhere, and set up your authentication. So this is directly direct access by using the API key. Again, I will find my API key under request headers. The name is API key. So label API key. Key is the API key, and the value is again from here. And that's my value. And again, we are expecting response in JSON, so we'll pass the accept parameter header property application JSON. Okay, save. Is correct? Okay, yeah, it's good. Now we have a base URL. Now we'll go set the collections, and again, item list is a collection. So one PO can have many items, one or many. So that's a collection. We can have many. So we'll go in a collection, and here we will add the rest of the path. So the entity with the inputs. Basically, we need an entity and a navigation property. So we'll go back. We have purchase order. This is the actual, we need an actual purchase order, and then the navigation to purchase order items. I mean, you can type it. I'm just doing it. I'm just copying it so I don't make any mistakes. So we are saying my PO number would be passed here and navigate to the purchase order item navigation. And again, limit it to top 50. You can ignore top 50 if you want to, get more results. And the same thing, the path doesn't change. All OData responses are with D and results. So this is a collection, so we can remove the D and results, so we get the access to multiple records. And save. Now we did not add the here URL placeholder, so we'll add a placeholder. It's called PO number, all lowercase. And this is not static. Static is off. We have a PO number as an input. Now we can test. So go to the test tab. Now it is saying cross, no value. You can click there, select static text, and add my PO number here and run a test. So the result is as expected. We have multiple array. This is based on the square bracket. Starting with a square bracket means it's a dimensional JSON array. So this the system was expecting as a multi records because it's a collection, and that is what we got. Now we'll set this from a schema and then save. So our data sources are set. We have two data sources, one for PO list, another for atom list. Now we'll come back to our UI design. On UI design, I don't want that header, so I will remove that. I'll remove that. This page, we'll name it as PO list, and we will use a list atom. Now you have a freedom. You can use list atom, or you can use a container and you can build your own list atom. You don't have to really use the list atom. This gives us a temporary container to start with, but the same functionality can be achieved using container. Now on a list atom, we have to bind this with a repeat. Again, we did create data source, but we did not add data source on a page. So let's go to variables and we'll add data source here. So we'll go down here to data variables, add data variable, and this is a PO collection. So we have PO collection here. Now, one more thing, the SAP Business Hub has a limit on how many queries you can execute in a second or something. There's a rate limit, and if you query a lot more, then it's gonna just return 500. By default, whenever you create a source in SAP Appgyver, it pulls data every, I think, 5 seconds. And if you don't disable that, most probably your app will not work. So we will remove that. You select the PO collection in a data variable, go down here, the logical pane here, and then remove this utility delay, which is actually polling. So just delete that. Now this will run only once. It will just extract and that's it. If you keep that, it will keep executing over and over, and that will block SAP you from executing several times. So we are good with the data variables part here. I'll close this one. Now back to our UI and then back to our list. Now I'm going to map here repeat with. I will go to data variables, data variable, and PO collection and save. So as you can see, it is recognizing it as a multiple record or a collection. And from here, we can map now our primary and a secondary label. So our primary label would be PO number. So I will go in the list and I'll find where my PO number is. Yeah, purchase order, save. And my secondary label, I don't know, what should I add? Maybe supplier name. Do we have supplier name here? Yeah, the phone number, supplier. So let's add supplier. Oh, that's a number, not a name. I want a name. So let me go see. Supplier, supplying supplier text. Current supplying supplier. I don't know. Let's leave this and save. So this should now generate a list. So if we run now at this point, we should be able to see the list, PO list. That's the one, open. So we have a PO list here. Supplier, I think that's the wrong field. It doesn't have any value in it. So let's go back and we'll change the secondary label. Repeat data, current. Do we have a supplier name? Supplier is just the ID and not the name. Supplier, salesperson, supplying supplier, supplying plant. What text I can add? Let's see supplier rep sales person name, and I don't see that either, so it seems there's no name. address region. Yeah, let's keep address region. Save. We'll go back to our list and we should have okay, so this is good enough. So we have a PO here and we have the region, address region on the secondary label. You can customize this based on your needs. You can create fancy ways. You can put multiple text. You can use a container, and that's not covered in this video, but you can do a lot of things. Now our first portion is complete. We have our PO list. Now we will integrate the detail page. So for that, we will go to our page here. We'll add a new page. We'll call PO details. Again, we don't need this text, so I will remove that. Save. Now in this page, we are going to call the get PO details, a single PO record, and the PO item list. So we'll go back to variables, we'll go to data variables, and here we will add a PO collection. And on this side here, we will say it's a single data record because we want to use just one and we don't want to call the collection. And we'll come back to the PO number. And then the second is PO items. We'll add PO items, and this is a collection because we can have multiple items, one or many. Now for the PO number, we have to pass a PO number from the PO list to the detail page and the item list. For that purpose, we will use the page parameters. So let's add a page parameter and we will call this as PO number. That's what we are going to pass. And then we go to our data variable under PO collection and we will assign that page parameter as the value. So as soon as we tap on the PO list, it will pass the PO number, and that PO number will be passed to this service and it will load the PO details. And PO item, we also need the PO number. So we will again map to the same variable as a page parameter and a PO number. And I save. Now, like what we did in a PO list, we stop polling. Or we will do that thing here too. So here, every time whenever you add a collection or a single, it automatically adds this polling delay, polling. So it keeps hitting system. Save. And we are good with this. Then we'll go back to our UI. Now the first thing, we want to show PO details. Now to keep it simple, I will add the PO number as the PO details and maybe PO date. I don't know if we have a date there. So let me see. So this one, first text, we will map to PO details. So data variables, PO collections, and in here, we want PO number. So that's purchase order, save. And the second one would be our purchase order date. Do we have a purchase order date? Purchase order date. Now this could not, this is a JSON formatting or JSON notation for dates. So it's not gonna look nice. So let's change to something else. And I wrote a function earlier. I don't know if I have shared in another video, but there's a function or there's a way to format the date. So let's pick the company code, save. Again, you can put it with the labels. If you want to do that, you can come here, pick the row container, put it on the page there. Now this one has, how many rows it has? 2 cells. So the row container has 2 cells. So we can fit our text in a second cell. And in the first cell, we will add a new text. And this we will call a PO number. PO number, something like that. And then we can resize the layout. So now it's 100 and 100. So this one will say, let's say 20 and 50. So that's good. This one also, we need to do the same thing. So I will pick the row container, put it down. This will have again 2 cells. So we'll put text in a second cell, which will go to the end. and the first cell will have a label. So come back, company code, and the layout. Where is the the cell row layout? We'll go back to layout here. We'll say this is 20% and save. So this looks nicer than just having a PO number and a company code. Now these are PO details. Now we have to integrate the PO item list or purchase order list. For that, we will again pick the list item down here, and now we'll go back to properties. This will be repeat with the data variable, PO items, and save. The primary label, material. It's all about the material. So let's select material. This will give us a material, and the secondary label we can maybe quantity or rate. So do we have quantities? Item volume, weight, material, net price, order price unit, order quantity. So let's say order quantity and save. So we have material and order quantity, bare minimum, and a save. Now we designed this second page, but we did not link our PO list with the item. So that part we will do it again. Go back to your PO list. Now we have to call the second page on the tab of the PO list item. So select the row, go down here in a flow logic, and then here add open page, because on tab we are going to open the second page. Connect this. Now open page by default selects the PO details, because there are only two pages. We are right now on a PO list, so the other one is PO details, and that's how it picks it up. And then since when we call the second page, it expects a parameter as a PO number, and this PO number is used for the to get the PO details and to get the item list. So we will map this with the data item in repeat. So we have multiple rows. So whichever we tap on, the system will pick the PO from that record or a row, and it will pass to the detail page. So we'll select that. We'll go to current, and we'll select purchase order here. There we have purchase order, and save. And save. So pretty much that's all we need. Now we'll go back to our preview page, and we'll select one here. That brings us to the next page. Here I can see my PO number and a company code, but I don't have any items on this PO. I have item on 11, PO 11, so I'll select this one, and you can see we have a PO number, we have company code, and I have an item. Now like I said earlier, you can extract the item list further down. For that, you can do the same process what we did for the PO. So you go in a item collections or item source, and you add the single item, and then on top of this single item you can fetch the details of that item, and then you can show multiple items. Now this works in a browser as a preview, or if I switch to my phone, it will work like how we see it here. That's all for this video. Thank you.